I want to start with something simple. When people say they want to feel at home, what they're usually describing isn't a building, they're describing a state of orientation. They want to feel like they know where they are. They want to feel like the environment around them isn't asking constant questions of their attention. This episode is about how that sense of home actually forms, why familiarity matters more than comfort, why groundedness isn't a productivity strategy, and how the same perceptual skills that make a place feel like home are the ones required to design humane systems. This sits at the core of Drawn to Place. Welcome to another edition of Drawn to Place podcast. I'm Sean, a designer and an educator. I'm so glad you're here. So, we tend to talk about home as a fixed thing, like an address, a house, a place we arrive at, or where we're from. We talk about going back home, where we ask, where's home? And this makes sense because home, that idea of home, the place you grew up, had a lot of influence on you because you were developing and learning and growing and becoming who you are while you were there. This is the exact practice I'm talking about here. Home is something that emerges. It doesn't only happen when you're young. It emerges through repetition, through returning, through spending enough time with a place that stops asking for constant explanation. Home is familiarity, and familiarity isn't passive. It's learned. You don't feel at home somewhere because it's perfect. You feel at home because you've learned its rhythms, where the light falls, how sound moves, what to expect and what to ignore. And that learning process is perceptual. It takes time. When you stop engaging with it in this deliberate way and you stop noticing the rhythms, it will change and you won't recognize home. If you've ever moved away from where you grew up, where you called home for say 18, 20 years, and then you go back, it's just odd. And I mean, if you've ever done this, you know what I'm talking about. And they say you can never go home again. And what they mean is obviously you can't go back to that time, that everything continues to change. And if you leave it, that home is stuck in the last way that you remembered it. But if you stay engaged in home, then it continues to develop with you no matter where you are. You can also live in a place for many years and that place can never become a home. It works the other way as well. This is something that I experience in where I'm living now, and that being here for 25 years, it's the longest I've ever lived in the same area, but it's also the place that feels the least like home. There's places I lived in for just under a year that feel very much like home, but it's because at that time when I was living there, I was very much engaged in it and noticing. Here, I just have never done that until recently, where I had to cognitively make an effort to engage and notice. So it's feeling more like home now. So there's a version of groundedness that gets marketed a lot right now. It's slow down so you can work better, get centered so you can perform more efficiently, be mindful so you can be more productive. That framing misses the point. Groundedness isn't a tool for output. It's a reduction in cognitive compensation. When you're grounded, you're not constantly spending energy just to stay oriented. You're not bracing against your environment. The relief comes from familiarity, not optimization. See, when I began to realize that this didn't feel like home, and all of the stuff that I am teaching with Drawn to Place when I was first developing that, because I wanted this place to feel like home, there was heavy cognitive load in me having to force myself back to what I used to do just naturally as a kid or a young adult and engage with place. And I had to relearn that. Well, now that cognitive load is gone because now I'm being more mindful of the stuff that's around me, but it's becoming automatic. And I'm slowing down and I'm being centered and I'm being mindful, but not because I want to work better or perform more efficiently or be more productive. It's just because I want to be part of this place and have the place be part of me. So it's a reduction on my cognitive compensation, and I'm grounded and I'm not constantly spending energy just to stay oriented anymore. So that relief comes from familiarity, not the optimization. And that's important because optimization often bypasses understanding. When you optimize, you move too quickly for intervention. Groundedness comes first, clarity comes second, action comes last. A place that becomes home when it stops being background, that's the place that we want to get. That cognitive load is gone, but you're still actively engaged in and you're noticing things. Everything isn't an automation. We don't want to get to that level of automation where everything becomes background either. So a place becomes home when it stops being the background. And that doesn't happen through novelty. It happens through return. When you stay with a place long enough, something shifts. Details stop being isolated. Relationships begin to form. You notice how one element affects another element, and you start to anticipate instead of react. This is why Drawn to Place insists on duration and analog. So analog practices like drawing, analog, writing, sustained observation, they're not aesthetic preferences. And they're not some Luddite saying technology is bad. It's that analog practices require you to be sustained. They're structural, they're deliberate choices in using analog. If you see a place and you just snap a picture of it, and you're like, wow, that's pretty, get out your phone, boom, or your other camera, boom, you take a picture, you walk on. You've missed 90% or more of the details that are there. You also have to think about how often are you going to go back and look at that. I have photos from vacations that I've never even looked at all of the images on there. And once I do start looking at it, I'm like, why did I take this picture? I can't remember. But I have sketchbooks where I sat down and I drew something, took 10, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour drawing something. You show me that one image of me drawing something. It could be something very mundane, but I can tell you exactly what the weather was like, what it sounded like. Maybe I had a drink, or we were sitting in a restaurant, what it smelled like. I'm immediately back to there because I was engaged and because it was analog. Now there's images that I've drawn with digital drawing tools and I don't get that same reaction. I look at it and I'm like, I drew that? I don't remember drawing that. Where was it? What day was it? And I look at the date and I still can't remember. I'm not sure what that is. I need to do more research on why the actual analog, I have ideas, the actual analog of seeing the point of your pencil or your pen making the mark on the paper versus the digital version of that. And I'm not against digital at all. There's very much a time and a place for it. But for these analog practices, they remove the speed, it removes the automation, it removes the ability to move on prematurely. And you can't rush what you're doing in an analog way. You can't rush the familiarity. And without familiarity, there is no home. There's only occupancy. You can live in a place and it doesn't feel like home. Like I've said here, I've felt that way. This will combat that. I started here with noticing mushrooms and trees. That's what I started with years ago. And now I still notice them. And the joy that I get from noticing different things that I'm like, there's nothing else to notice here. But there's always something more to notice. And it's not just in the natural world either. I mean, my daughter and I were on a walk yesterday and I noticed a completely different garage door that I've never even seen before. There's about 6 or 7, maybe 10 different styles of garage doors in my neighborhood that people use. And if you're following along on Instagram or TikTok, Drawn to Place, you'll see me drawing a lot of those different garage doors. That's a form of using the grid to stay noticed and stay grounded. But I noticed a different garage door. It's not because I was looking for garage doors, it's that I got into the habit of noticing. I'm noticing different little details, different types of mushrooms. Even found some different mushrooms that we'd never seen before. Just the other day, my daughter and I did at a playground that we go to all the time. It's because that muscle is getting strengthened. It's not the idea of, that idea of when you are thinking about buying a car and you are thinking about getting a, Toyota Corolla or something. All of a sudden, that's all you see on the road. Or you thinking about changing the color of your front door to red. And then all of a sudden, that's all you see are red front doors everywhere. It's not that. It's a different level of that. It's not because it's on your mind. It's just you get noticed. you get used to this noticing muscle, you're building this noticing muscle, and you start noticing all of the details. Whereas, like when you snap a photo, you're missing all those details and you probably won't even see them because it's been reduced down too small. You won't see the details that you would if you were using an analog practice to engage with place. Again, this isn't about the finished product. It isn't about making a beautiful drawing or this wonderful sketchbook that you want to show off or publish or teach people how to draw with. No, that's not at all what this is about. It's about the act of doing it, taking that time to notice all of the things. You could do the drawing and then throw it away if you want, because the art and the magic of it is you slowing down and taking that time and engaging with the place, not just rushing by, snapping a photo and move on. Right? That's not going to help you engage with a place. Now, here's where it starts to matter beyond the personal grounding part. Familiarity sharpens perception. When you know a place well, you don't just feel comfortable in it, you can read it. You notice subtle changes. You will sense misalignments before they become obvious problems. And that ability isn't emotional, it's perceptual. And it's transferable. This is where it really gets fun for me, especially as a designer. But that same skill that allows a place to feel like home, that allows you to identify friction in buildings or interfaces, neighborhoods, and systems, that's all transferable. It happens at I'm looking for mushrooms, but I also can notice stuff in a design that isn't working very quickly. Whether I'm looking at a floor plan, whether I'm looking at the design of a kid's toy or something else, it's because of that noticing. It's because of me having the empathy. It's because of me being able to quickly put myself into the user's shoes, because I'm always thinking about and noticing things around. Right? Familiarity improves judgment, and you don't need more data when perception is trained. You need more time with the right scale. Many design failures aren't failures of intelligence. They're failures of familiarity. The designers, the planners, the decision makers often intervene in systems they haven't inhabited long enough to understand. They hear a trend and they think that's what's trending, and they just want to make money. They want to get the design done. They push it out. One really sad example of this, something that I'm fighting against on another channel that I have on Instagram and TikTok called Everyday Architecture, is this idea of the open floor plan. People don't understand how much work goes into making an open floor plan that works. And because of that, so many people despise and shy away from the open floor plan, the exploded box, because they've never been in one that actually works. They've been in the ones where these house flippers will buy a house and they just start knocking walls out because that's what they think an open floor plan is, means no walls. That's not at all what it is. There has to be hierarchy. There still has to be flow. There still has to be these zones that are set up and established in a way that doesn't put pressure on the decor and the furniture to define space. Spaces can still be defined and it can still be open, but there's a way to do it. And designers and the planners and the people that do that, they're intervening in that system that they haven't ever inhabited. They don't understand it. And that's when you get bad design. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to optimize before they orient, and they redesign before they actually belong. Who knows if their house is open floor plan or not? But if they've never lived in it, if they've never been in an open floor plan that feels good, that works, they don't understand what they're actually doing. And it's a common thing. It's like another example that I use of it is like contemporary art. People going to an art museum and seeing like a Rothko or a Mondrian. They're like, my kid can do that. It's just rectangles of blue, right? With a Rothko or whatever, whichever one you're looking at for that. Mondrian is like these odd just rectangles of different colors, yellows, reds, blues, these primary colors with black lines between them. A Pollock is just splattered paint. My kid could do that, right? They can't. And you can do something that impersonates it, but it's not going to be the same for a lot of different reasons. That's a whole other podcast with that contemporary art and stuff. But that's another example. That's something else that I use when I'm talking, especially with open floor plans and you're optimizing to just kind of finish it or make money or think that this is what people want. But human-centered design isn't primarily about empathy as a feeling. It's about attunement to the context as well. You cannot design for people without understanding the environments that shape their behavior. And that understanding comes from staying, from being in it and from staying. An example of designers not being attuned to the context and not being familiar with understanding how their product is fully used is this vacuum that I have. It's a great little vacuum. It's wireless. It hangs on this little charging station. It works great. It's a full size, pretty much full size upright vacuum. You know, it's not just like a little dust buster. It's a full vacuum, has attachments and the long, it's not a hose. It's just the tube that goes down, and it works fantastic. We love it because it's light and it's wireless, and we can take it around to different parts of the house very easily. The problem is the designers have decided that I always have to put it back on the charging station when it's not in use. They're telling me, the user, that I have to take it off the wall, use it, and put it back on the wall. Now, how are they telling me this? Because it doesn't stand up. Think about how you use a regular vacuum, other vacuums, like plug-in vacuums, right? You either click it back because it's standing upright, or you push the little pedal and it unlocks and you can put the handle back and you use it. Okay. Then you click it back upright and you throw it back in the corner or against the wall, just out of the way, right? Wherever you want to store it for a little while. This vacuum doesn't stand up on its own. I can't put it in a corner. I can't lean it against the wall. It'll just fall over. The battery life on it is really good, which is great. And there's many times I just want to leave it downstairs because I want to use it later, like tomorrow or whatever, because that's where it's used the most. But the charger is upstairs. So why force me to go put it back on the charger when the battery life is still alive? There's still a lot of vacuuming that can be done with it. Okay? That is a design failure that comes from lack of familiarity, not from intelligence. There's a lot of intelligence that went into this design, but that right there is a lack of understanding of how people are going to use your product and not noticing that when you designed it. You designed it in the proverbial hermetically sealed ivory tower. This is how our product is used. This is how you have to use our product, not how are people going to use this product and how can we design it for them. Using all this intelligence and everything that we made this wonderful little vacuum, but yet they're missing this point. That comes from lack of familiarity, not from intelligence. And that is from them not being attuned to the context in which their product is used. I mean, I could go on. My wife gets tired of hearing me complain about all the non-empathetically designed products that we encounter. And a lot of them I have redesigned to work better because it's usually to me, looks like a very easy fix. I see it quickly, so I just do it. And this is why Drawn to Place begins with the small, the ordinary elements like windows, doors, thresholds, patches of moss, mushrooms. They aren't subjects. These are all training grounds. These are all things that are accessible to you as you're learning this noticing skill. They teach patience, they teach relationship, they teach proportion and scale. And once those perceptual muscles are trained, then you can apply them everywhere. Drawn to Place doesn't ask you to notice everything. It asks you to choose one thing and stay with it. Let's go back to the vacuum. If you're a vacuum designer, they need to pay attention to how people use their vacuum, not the people they bring into their studio or their offices or wherever, like, hey, we have this vacuum, we're going to try it out, we're going to do some product testing. How do you use this vacuum? It's not just the act of vacuuming. It's not like, how close to the wall can I get and it's still sucking up dirt? How well does it get pet hair out of the carpet? That's all important stuff. But you need to look at the entire process. What does the person do before they grab the device? What does the person do while they're using the device? Are they just pushing toys out of the way, or do they clean up all the toys? I'm going to guess, if you're like me, you're not cleaning up every toy. You're going to leave the toys or the stuff in the way, shoes or whatever, that you can just push out of the way with your vacuum. So you make a vacuum that can do that without sucking up the toy or the part of the shoelace or whatever, right? It's only getting the dirt. Hey, what do they do when they are done with the vacuuming with that part of the vacuum? If you're like me, I vacuum. I want to stand it up and just push it against the wall and just leave it there. I don't put it back every single time, especially if I'm going to use it some more. Okay, so that's part of being part of the noticing and the context in which it's used. And that constraint that I talk about with drawn to place, and your attention gets very focused into one thing, that constraint is intentional. By narrowing your focus, attention deepens. By returning repeatedly, variation becomes visible. By resisting novelty, coherence emerges. This is how places become home, and it's how systems become humane. Not through speed, not through volume, but through familiarity. Home is not just where you live. It's a way of seeing. It's the ability to stay long enough for a place or a problem to reveal itself. It's the discipline of familiarity in a culture addicted to acceleration. Okay, that's a big part of this. A lot of problems come from acceleration and lack of noticing. And you can call those like your high level problems. So I talk about low tech exposes those high level problems because low tech is going slower. It's allowing us to notice that. I'm going to say that sentence again just for you so you get it. It's the discipline of familiarity in a culture addicted to acceleration. Groundedness isn't about doing less. It's about seeing more clearly, and clarity, whether in personal life or professional practice, comes from the same source: sustained, intentional attention. That's what Drawn to Place is practicing. If this resonates, the written version of this episode, not a full transcript, but it's just an essay on this same topic, is available on my Substack, where I explore how familiarity becomes home and how that understanding carries into design and architecture and everyday systems. Also follow me here on YouTube or over on Instagram or TikTok. I also have this channel called Everyday Architecture, which I mentioned earlier, where I take the things that I'm teaching here in Drawn to Place and put it into a very practical design situation in regards to architecture. I have links to all that in the show notes as well. I'm so glad you're here. Keep noticing.